I'm a little overwhelmed at the turnout. So first I want to just say thank you everyone for coming today. It does seem very appropriate for me to present this subject today because it is 50 years of this birthday at this time in my life of being devoted to the concepts, and it's very apropos because it's really an anniversary for me of very big changes, which I'm going to be happy to share with all of you. I also want to know that Wendy, in her polite way, instead of just saying, Sheri, you talk too fast, said, Sheri, New Yorkers talk very fast. To let me know that I do tend to talk too fast. Please, if I start getting excited and running away with it, just start waving me down. I'm going to try to talk slower, but I feel like I'm a sloth right now. And the other thing I want to say is I'm really going to try not to cry, but the older I get, the more easily it is for me to get emotional, especially in my own story. But I know most people will understand where this is coming from when I say it's my party and I'll cry if I want to. So some of you, the Americans, understand. It's a song. So without any further ado, I'm going to share this screen. Okay, so I'm on Wendy's, so on my thing, share screen. Okay, got it. Here we go. Okay, I think I did it correctly.
You did.
I call it Wonders Never Cease, and it's this particular presentation is about developments in my life in spiritual healing and mediumship, starting though, of course, with my story. I was born in 1951 into what I call stage one thinking. Stage one is what my mother always called the real world. And the real world is what you can see with your physical eyes and hear through your physical ears. So many of you have come on and said, well, my mom was a medium. I grew up in circles, or, you know, my parents were strong believers in miracles. Well, I was born Sheri Perl on February 5th, 1951. And my parents didn't believe in anything except being good people and trying to raise their standard of living. It was culturally a Jewish home, but we did not know if there was a God, and we were certainly not taught that there was. We certainly didn't believe in miracles, although I did as a child. We all do it in our fairy tales. But by the time I hit middle age, I mean teenage, I really did believe in my mother's version of the real world. And I really did think that people like ourselves were pretty goony and not really intelligent people, or they were deluded by some religious thing about an immaculate conception. But at 16 years of age in high school, I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. Many of you know that this is an inflammatory bowel disease that causes a tremendous amount of pain, a tremendous amount of running to the bathroom. It's a very tough disease. It occurs a lot in young people. But, you know, we were stage one people. And back in those days, you didn't even consider diet or therapy. Actually, therapy was a dirty word. No one would admit they went to a therapist. So we did what most people would do. And I was put on AM pills and PM pills. And after a year, I wasn't any better. And then a friend of my father's visited our home and told me about this gentleman in England, Mr. Harry Edwards, called the Man in the Sanctuary. And that he had actually healed friends of his in the Bahamas. It was just a distant healing. They called it absent healing then. And I thought it was the biggest bunch of bunk I'd ever heard in my life. So I did not pursue this at all. And by 1969, things got very, very bad. Well, anyway, I had major surgeries, and I was also infected with hepatitis C through blood transfusions. And so it was a very tough time. And when I recovered, I was also at that time had this temporary ostomy, and it was a very hard adjustment. But I think youth is just incredible. Yeah, we didn't know about the hepatitis yet. I just had to adjust to my new living situation, and youth rises up. And I went to a local university where I was enrolled, and I could not really concentrate. So, and guys were like hitting on me. I just couldn't handle it. So when my high school boyfriend proposed marriage, I was a child bride at 19. And here we are, Ruth, Sandra, and me. But shortly after I moved with my ex up to where he was graduating from Colgate University, the hepatitis started to make itself known. And I was very, very weak. I felt like I had the flu. So stage 1 people went back to the doctor. And the doctors eventually, after many, many months of bed rest and no change, did a biopsy and told me that it was this chronic form. Hepatitis C was just being understood then. And that if they did not come up with a cure, you know, that my parents should give money to research, because if they didn't come up with a cure, I might not make another 10 years. And after the biopsy, you know, I was lying in the bed thinking, well, they've got nothing for me. And, you know, I always thought I knew everything, but I never knew all these things could happen to a person. So maybe, I don't know everything. So we got the information on this man in the sanctuary, and my father hand-delivered the letter to England, although at the time he didn't believe in it any more than I did. But we were desperate, and desperation paved the way to this. Whoopsie. There you go. And through a hand-delivered letter, this man did something. I had no idea at the time what the hell he did. But he directed energy to me. And within 48 hours of I had not read any books. I had never heard of spiritual healing. My dad had not yet returned from England. And I had so much energy, I was flying. And I had like pins and needles in my right side where the liver is. So I knew something wonderful was happening, but I sure as hell didn't have a clue what it could be. But I knew something I couldn't see, feel, or touch was lifting me up in ways that no medical treatment had done since I was 16. And I wanted to know about it. At the same time, my ex dropped out of business school or wherever he was. And my father helped us go out to a ranch where my ex was trained as a horse trainer, and I was able to convalesce. And here I am in my 20s, and I enter stage 2. That's 1971 to 1991. That was my horse buck. And I swore I would never go to a doctor again as long as I lived. And I would never reverse the bowel situation, because I would never go under the knife again. Medical science was the enemy of the people. So you see, I went from stage 1 all the way to stage 2, which was the total other end of the spectrum. So my life, my interests, my new path became wanting to know everything about spiritual healing. And to those of you who might want to ever, Harry passed in 1982, but his sanctuary still practices if anyone wants to copy it down. That's the link to his sanctuary, which still is running. But in any event, I took courses. It was all through the mail, of course, study courses. And the other thing I did was I stayed in touch, because I was afraid, you know, I didn't know yet why I'd gotten well or if I'd stay well. And there was no internet. I would write for myself, and I started writing for others. I started interceding for others who had problems, sometimes without telling them if they were, especially one girl who was in a mental institution, because I knew her doctors would prevent me from being in contact with her if they read her letters, because this sounded like, this was 1970, you know. But I remember how she got better. So I was starting to just study and observe through it all. And then I started learning about mediumship and found out that this wonderful medium lived only 20 minutes from my farm, and she spoke for an entity called Seth. And I fell in love with the whole philosophy. It was incredibly stage 2. It fit into everything I ever wanted to believe. It said, you know, you create your own reality and you can create good health. And I go and went, well, all I got to do is think positively and I'll never have to go to a doctor again. I'm safe. And I wrapped myself up like in a comfort blanket. There were certain aspects, certain other things I knew I couldn't answer, but it felt so good. I felt so safe, and it worked perfectly well with stage 2 thinking. I got very carried away. And then shortly after I started those classes, my father and Mr. Edwards passed. And I left my marriage and I moved to Manhattan and eventually met up with and became involved with a gentleman I met in the Seth classes. That's my husband now, Jerry. Here we were. I was in my stage 2 now, where you never go to a doctor. So we had to go to Las Vegas to get married because there was no blood test. That was me. When I'm some way, I'm all the way. So we adopted all of our children as babies. And it was also very easy for many years for me to think, man, guys, I just had it together because everything just fell into place like a fairy tale. And, you know, I felt like I had the great secret. I didn't need medical science. And I knew a lot of people who would say to me when I was in this place, well, I'm safe, you know, why should I lock my doors? And I remember saying that to Jerry, and he's like, believe you're safe and lock your doors. But I was very one side of the spectrum. Isn't buying health insurance betting against your own good health? I'd heard people talk about that in the classes. If you believe, if you really believe hard enough, why, that's what, you know, people thought. So I don't need mammograms. For years, I didn't get mammograms because I would say, well, you know, I won't create cancer. It became so oversimplified that when my 10-year-old Aaron, who may be listening, I'm going to stay on the story because I don't want to go over my time, but it was a 10-year-old who asked me if I knew for sure I would never create cancer. And I said, well, honey, I don't know for sure. And he said, and that's how you take care of us, Mom? Finding out when it's too late to do anything about it. So I started having mammograms when I was 40. But the point being, I went very, very far to one side. And my life's a great teacher, though. And guess what, guys? Trouble in paradise. I had a recurrence. Well, and actually, it wasn't even a recurrence. It was really that scar tissue had grown in so thoroughly that I had these very bad adhesions. But stage 2 doesn't go to the doctors. So I lived with pain for 6 months until 1 month I had a total and complete obstruction. When I was rushed to the hospital, to me, it was my fall from grace. I had been teaching Seth classes, and I'll admit, it was great when people wanted to have a baby or say they found the right parking space. But when someone came in with cancer, I knew there were things I couldn't quite answer. There was some level I didn't get to. But to me, I still thought I had some kind of great truth. So when I was lying on that table and they were shoving this tube down my nose to open up, I felt like I had the biggest failure of all time, that I should need medical attention. That to me was like the healing teacher had failed. But then one of the doctors looked at me and said, why did you wait so long before coming for help? Bingo. What the hell was I thinking? Who did I think I was? And why did I think because I believed a certain way that there weren't other factors beyond me, or even maybe some beliefs that I harbor that are not in line with the highest good? You know, according to the set thing, is only what you believe. I think it's a piece of a puzzle, not the truth of the universe. But it took me to be here and to hear that question, to realize that in my own way, I'd gone so far, you kind of call it a cult, which is why I switched into, at that point, what I call now stage 3, which is where, I guess, 1991 to present, And that's the middle road, or common sense spirituality. It's not either or. It can include both medical science and spiritual healing. Mr. Edwards always said they should work hand in hand. You're allowed to take antibiotics and pray. Yes, we work with breathing in the light, but you've got to become mindful of your own darkness. Having compassion. Let me tell you, when I had this recurrence, I didn't say, oh, you poor thing, how can I help you? I said, you idiot, you know better than this. That's how people can mess themselves up with stage 2 thinking. So having compassion, healing the heart, even when the body can't heal. Everybody thinks healing's healing the cancer. Well, yes, that's what we want. But what about those cases where that won't happen? Can we heal the heart? Thinking positively, yes, of course. Again, this is common sense. If they tell you you have cancer and you say, I can't do anything, you won't even drink carrot juice. I mean, it's only, again, if you go back to common sense, yes, thinking positively is a good thing. It's just not a goddamn guarantee. And no one should hold it as that. Where was I? So don't be cocky about thinking positively. Admit and surrender to this mystery. And if you're not humbled before that mystery, you're a bigger fool than me, because I wasn't, and look where I ended up. Hold your concepts lightly. Don't make truths out of hypotheses, because what is truth today, you may find in 10 years, it's not how you see it anymore. When a philosophy becomes the truth, rather than giving freedom, which is what I thought it did, it creates limits. You think a certain way, you begin to alter your life to suit those truths. Let it be, just hold them lightly. And which is why I absolutely was compelled to rewrite. This book was originally published in 1989 by New American Library as Healing from the Inside Out. But it didn't bring in my fall from grace. It ended you in a place of, if you believe this way, you can make this happen. And it's now says, if you believe this way, you have a better chance of making this happen. But it admits for the fact that there is mystery, that there are things that may be soul choice, karmic. There may be no answer we can understand. We're always looking to find the answer, but maybe we just don't know. And so I rewrote this and self-published it in 2011 to bring the reader up to where I stand now, which is more or less, spirit is real and communication is possible. And there's so many there that want to help us. Those of you that want to develop, the best thing you can do is develop a trust for spirit. Trusting spirit and the desire to be connected to spirit. Those are your biggest prerequisites for this, because they want to relate with you as well. But if you're scared, if you're afraid of spirit, or you don't trust who you're relating to, well, it's not going to be the best relationship. Of course, as with any skill, like playing the piano or anything, time is necessary. Practice meditation. If you don't like meditation, practice chanting, practice prayer. It's not necessarily which one you choose, it's just taking the time. I'm going to be teaching a self-healing workshop through Wendy and Karen, and it's called self-healing because it's not about the techniques. I don't have any great wisdom to give anybody. It's just using the simple techniques. It's getting us to put our goddamn ass in the chair, take 5 minutes from whatever we think is so important, especially many still in lockdown have more time, and just breathe for a minute. The techniques I teach are very easy. So, and through them, we also work with becoming mindful of what stands in your way, what's blocking you. Because our work is not just to make the darkness, our work is to make the darkness conscious. For when it is invisible, repressed, or denied, we're powerless to do anything about it. So we work with that in my workshop. as well. And so any of you that want to reach me to talk about the workshop or what we're going to do, just if you go to sheriperl.com, you'll find Contact Sheri, and they'll give you my email addresses there. And unless you want me to take a break, I'll just go into the current beautiful healing story. That go into it. You got it.
Yeah, you're 23 minutes in.
I think that's all. I think we're just perfect for time, Karen.
Yep.
Okay.
No worries.
Okay. A wonderful healing story. I'm so happy about this. I titled this Spiritual Healing and Mediumship Working Hand in Hand. Now, I've been strictly instructed. I am not giving a whole talk on electronic voice phenomenon today. We don't have the time, and this is about healing. But I could not tell you that the mediumship was involved in this whole incredible healing story. Now, Keith Clark, I don't know if he's here.
He is.
But Keith is an amazing ITC researcher, and he's created all kinds of phenomenal things. Sound sources, streams of sound that have no human vocal in them. They're just sound. I don't know if you'll hear this. You might. Now, everyone says it sounds like chicken scratch, and I guess it does to most people, but I literally have back and forth conversations on this little line. And if it wasn't for Wendy, I'd never know why. But she told me that it's clairaudience, and it means I hear the word in my head first, and that's how I can make it out through the sound, which means I don't need the sound. And that means why I knew so many things that came to me. But you see, I just never trusted myself enough. And that goes for all the would-be mediums. Things always came in my head. And I know there's moms here who'll say, yeah, you told me this and you told me that and you were right. But I never trusted myself. And by getting this line, which Keith made, which is the greatest gift to me, I get to have confirmation that I'm really hearing what I'm hearing. And when it works out like this, it's extra special good. So I'm on the line one morning, and I usually go on each day a little while, whether I'm doing a reading or not, to talk to who I call my spirit team, which is my son Daniel, who unfortunately passed over in 2008, and Mr. Edwards. He did pass over, and he's not here, but let me tell you, no love lost. I talked to Danny, just like this gentleman, Len, talks to his wife. I talked to Danny, and it's very cool. So I'm on my little device. So I check in with my team, and I'm on my little device here one morning. This is how, and I tell Daniel that, well, actually, I didn't get on to tell him. Daniel knew because they know my thoughts. I know the bottom line is I go on to hear their thoughts. They know mine. So I kind of told Daniel that I had a case I wanted him to work on. And this was the case. And I've been given permission to let you know, the girl interested in having the baby is my beautiful niece. She was at the time 35 years old. She had not been ovulating in years. And she wants to have a baby. So I was on the line, and one morning I'm on the line, and Danny comes through, and he says, Mom, you know I work with Mr. Edwards now. And he said, well, we spoke to the spirit doctors. Now, Mr. Edwards never named who his spirit doctors were, although the rumor was that they were the Lord Lister and the late Louis Pasteur. He never named them, though, even though mediums had done drawings of them. And I always wondered why, but now I know why. I'm shy to even mention him because everyone will accept I'm not bulling it when I say I'm talking to my own son, but just start saying you're talking to, you know, I just don't like to throw around names, but in any event, this is what I believe, so I'm sharing it. So Danny gets on the line and he says, we've spoken to the spirit doctors and they say Sarah has a cyst. And that's why she hasn't been ovulating. And if she has the cyst removed, she will ovulate. So, you know, I, of course, tell my sister Sandra, who you all met, and we're like laughing, like, well, what is this girl going to do? Going to go to her OBGYN and say, by the way, my dead cousin says I have a cyst. Could we do an x-ray? I mean, we just laughed. So we just hoped, you know, we just kept hoping. And then one morning, I'm on the line, and Danny gets, I didn't include that Danny said the spirit doctors said they would do everything they could to dissolve the cyst. And so I told my sister that, and we said, well, we pray, you know, what can we do? So I get back on the line, and Danny goes, Mom, I mean, he was so excited. It came through with different energy. The spirit doctors have dissolved the cyst. Well, I call up my sister and tell her, and she goes, Sheri, she's just had the first real cycle she's had in years. So, as my mother would say in Yiddish, Alavai, it's just too much. We're so excited. So what's next? Many steps ahead. Normal ovulation begins. Sarah, a sperm donor, is selected. Sarah has a lovely wife, and they wanted to have a baby, but Sarah needed to select her sperm donor, which she did, a very good friend of hers, which is so nice. They did try insemination, which failed, but we had to harvest eggs. I feel like it's a joint effort, you see. And 6 out of the 6 eggs that were harvested, 2 were viable, which means well enough, strong enough to be fertilized. 2 were fertilized. 1 was implanted by IVF. 1 egg is placed in deep freeze for future sibling. Now we wait to hear. I get on the line. The baby's been conceived, Mom. This baby is very happy. She's very happy to be there. She's been conceived, but I don't know. I think it was at least 3 weeks, if not more, till we got the news. And now we're further along, but cast your eyes on this, guys. There's the girls. Isn't that something wonderful? Doesn't that bring a smile to your face? There she is. And so why I wanted to share this story, even though I know there's probably more momentous stories of cancer healings, it's the way it all came through the line to show that we are so connected to spirit in so many ways, and they do want to work with us. And so in my final conclusion of all of this presentation, I have to say there's very different avenues to healing. There's working with the spirit team through thought and prayer. There's working with energy healing, such as many of you do Reiki. Working with hands-on. There's therapeutic counseling. We all know how important the mind is. There's strengthening the physical immune system. Diet, vitamins, minerals, exercise. There's strengthening what I call the spiritual immune system, which is taking time to practice some form of relaxation, whether it be meditation, chanting, listening to music, having fun. And when I'm really down, doing something for someone else. I could be feeling really bad, get an email from a bereaved mom. Doing something for someone else is one of the greatest cures for when you want to strengthen your own spiritual immune system. Making peace with what you can't change. And sometimes that's just what you don't understand. I cannot tell you how many moms I meet who just want to know, just want this one, they'll ask their child in an EVP, can you just tell me why this had to happen? And some things we may not understand in this life, not able to put in terms. There may be no one answer because there is a mystery. So healing the heart, even when the body can't repair, even when the mind can't reconcile everything. I do recommend for that, if you're caught in one of those healing things where the body must heal, reading Healing into Life and Death by Stephen Levine. And of all things, be thankful for what you've got and the conditions for your happiness that you take daily for granted. Sight, sound, ability to walk, talk, eat. As Harry always used to say, find happiness in the simplest things in life.